Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I know the competition on the campground is pretty steep. There are actually a couple of things that I'd be interested in being at right now. I was driving through the campground, and it is just, it's just amazing to see what is being done here and just all the different stories, narratives, messages. You know, we're learning everything from Austrian economics, right? Like, where does money come from? To, I don't know, beekeeping. And so there's really something for everyone here. The reason I wanted to tell my story about how I got arrested is storytelling is actually how we are going to have our success. The way people change their minds, as we know, is through persuasion. And the way that people understand or can be persuaded of something is usually by storytelling. So this is my story. It was a dark and stormy night. It wasn't really a dark and stormy night, but it was a fairly brisk, very early spring, March night. I had been in Manchester for literally to bail out someone who had got arrested previously for doing a pro-cannabis 420 rally in Nashua. And that story sort of segues into this one. But basically what happened there was we had it was during Liberty Forum, which is our winter event. And so Pork Fest, which you're all here for, is our summer event, and that's where we get more casual, and it's more fun, it's a week long. Liberty Forum's a little more suit and tie, but we like to make it fun. So we decided it was an unseasonably warm day, and we were gonna have this 420 rally. So we're there, there's probably a good more than 100 people. Everyone is openly smoking. I literally saw a bong that was this long that someone ran into a street and gave a hit to someone on a motorcycle without a helmet because New Hampshire is awesome. And everyone should wear their helmet. That seems smart, but you should be free not to be forced to wear your helmet as it is. So we're there, we're having a good time, it's peaceful, and of course, when the state gets involved, it becomes less peaceful. So for some reason, there were undercover narcs at this rally, and the thing we saw was them pull their shields out. They wear it on a chain, and they have their badge inside their shirts, and they pulled them out. And I'm not kidding, literally arrest the one black kid at the rally. And we were like, for real? Come on, right? So it was one of those interesting situations where you can actually notice, depending on how you allow the energy to change within a group, that you have moments to make a decision. And I mention that because I think riots and these things turn on these moments. So there was a moment where people started yelling, "Fuck the police." And then there was a moment of, can we switch this? And I equally loudly started yelling, "No victim, no crime." Now, everyone who knows me knows I'm very loud, so if I'm gonna yell and it's a yell-off, I'm probably gonna win. So we did turn it to "No victim, no crime," which is the important part of the story, because that is truly what we're trying to help people understand, is that even when you don't like something and you would not personally do it, it is wrong to expect your neighbor or your friend to acquiesce to your preferred desires. The point is supposed to be, in a free society, you do your jam and I do mine, right? So, no victim, no crime. The police arrest this guy. What happens in the interim is activists have surrounded the police car. The police, these two undercover cops, are having a a moment because they realized, oh shit, like this was not what we were planning on. We thought we were gonna pop this guy and it was just gonna be done. But oh no, there's this situation. There was an activist who actually sat down in front of the police car and just said, I'm not going to move. So they called for backup. 11 squad cars come screaming into downtown Nashua. So now we've got like 80 people. It's getting, it's like no victim, no crime. There may be, the police don't actually know what to do. So the cops jump out of their cars. Some of them, there was a paddy wagon, there was Alsatians, the dogs are lurching. It's interesting. I actually may or may not have had a fair amount of weed on me. I may not have. And so I was trying to keep a distance, but keep an eye on things. And one of the officers actually looked out, sort of at this stage, it was sort of like a wall of police and a wall of activists. And the police officer goes, first one of them goes, hey, is he one of us? Like I saw two of them, right? Because they're looking. And the guy's like, no. And then another officer goes, he's got a gun. And one of our friends yells back, we all have guns. What now? And it was such an interesting moment, right? Because it was very much, we talk about these ideas, but then you have to take them into practice. And we're nonviolent people. I think this is something we can't emphasize enough. Our unifying theory is the non-aggression principle. We just extend it to say the government, i.e. 51% of people, do not have the right to aggress against the minorities either, right? Fine, so that is like the week before. What some of the 420, the cannabis activists decided was, this was a big story, it made the news and whatever, and they were like, we'd like to keep the impetus going. Now remember, this was 2010, so it's 12 years ago. The pot scene was a little different. There wasn't as much decriminalization. There wasn't as much acceptance as we see now, but it's also a testament to the activism that's been done both in New Hampshire, but I would say worldwide with cannabis, to sort of spread the message and, get the science out there and to show that it's not a harmful substance. Anyway, so this kid decided he was going to keep doing 420 rallies. And so they went, but they made the mistake of not having safety in numbers. So what is probably one of the biggest value propositions of the Free State Project, at least for me, is that notion of safety in numbers. And it's not a hypothetical, right? You can talk to our activists here, and they will often say, when something happens, people will stand by you. We will come to court, we will help, we'll petition. And so they decided they were going to go back, and they went back twice, and the last time there were only two of them, and the police decided to seize their opportunity, and so they arrested them. So this is the day I go to bail out this guy, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to bail him out, and that was the plan, and that was going to be what was going to happen, and then things went extremely pear-shaped. So we'd gone out, we'd gone to a bar, had a few drinks, and then I had skis in the back of my car, which I had stupidly fallen for the ski seasonal rental thing where they're like, you're going to use this every weekend, get the big deal and whatever. And of course, I went once, didn't get around to it, but I had these skis and I had like one more day to drop them off, and they were in the back of the car. So I thought, oh wow, I'll just follow these friends who live next to the ski place home. I'll crash at their house, and I'll take the skis in the next day, and then I'll go home. So this is 2010, so shockingly, not everyone has GPS, because we forget how quickly technology changes. No GPS for me. I mean, they were available, but they weren't on your phone. So if you didn't have the device on your dash, you didn't have one, right? No GPS, and I had an actual video camera. So fine, we leave, we're going. I'm following these friends to their house. I don't really know where I'm going. I'm literally just following the car in front of me. We're going this way into the town of Ware. I have a recommendation. If you're going to get arrested and you're going to tell the story of your arrest a lot, don't get arrested in the town called Ware. Because everyone's like, where? And I'm like, where? And they're like, where? And I'm like, where? So where did I get arrested? I got arrested in Ware, New Hampshire. So I was going this way, 2 cars following each other, and the cops are coming from the front. So we've gone past. We were coming into town, so we were going faster, and I was braking. I know I was braking to go in. And for anyone who's new, New Hampshire's little roads can be a little sneaky because you can drive, and then there's a sign, and it goes, from 45 or 50 on a back windy road, and then it just drops to like 30 when you're going into town. And of course, that's, where the bandits like to catch you, right? So we're braking, cops coming this way. I see him do a U-E, and the blues go on behind me. So what would you think? You'd think you're getting pulled over, right? So I pull over, and the car in front of me pulls over, and the squad car parks in the middle between the 2 cars. And he gets out, and he comes to me, and now I've only cracked my window this much, and, now I'm actually like, I have an entirely different approach. Now I like roll down my window and I go, hey, do you know who I am? Because I love telling this story and they hate it because I'll take out my camera and I'll start, and they're like, oh, okay, whatever, leave, So I had only my window open a little bit. And he's like, I'm not pulling you over. And I'm like, well, I didn't know how I was supposed to understand or, magically know that. So that's great. But however, I am following this gentleman, and so I can't leave, even though you're instructing me to leave, because I don't know where to go. We were in front of the school there, the middle school or primary school, and I was like, well, that's the school. Is it okay? I'm just going to go park in the school's parking lot. And he's like, yeah, whatever. So I pull into the school's parking lot. Now the officer's gone to my friend's car. They are carrying, and one of the first questions they will ask you, I don't know if they do it now because this hasn't happened to me in a long time, but for a while there, it may have been after some shootings or something, they were asking, the first or second question would be, for your and my safety, do you have any guns in the vehicle, right? And so this person said, yes, I do, and then the guy kind of freaked out. But now what was happening in the interim, unbeknownst to me, I'm sitting in the parking lot. I'm like, man, that cop acted kind of weird. Like, he was sort of like, he seemed a little, at that stage, I wasn't even being difficult yet. But he had a weird energy, and I was like, I have this camera. I'm here for the Free State. I watch the cop block videos. I can be a badass, too. I'm going to go try this out, right? So I jump out of the car, and I put my camera, and I'm behind a fence. Like, there's a picket fence, and it's coming up to at least my waist, and I'm at least 30 feet away from them. And I did yell, hey, I'm audio and video recording, as if I know what I'm doing, right? By this time, they've called for backup. So the cop who's dealing with the car at the front, he's not happy that I've put my camera on him, so he calls for backup. We also called for backup. So we had this program, and if someone ever wants to, reinvigorate this, It was called Pork 411, and it was a service that we did, and you could call in and leave a message, and it would go to all the Free Staters in the state, and it would be a way we could alert each other if something was happening or you need someone to turn up. It got a little abused, and this was back when we still didn't understand moderation or just telling people no. You'd be like, this is my property, it's my group, go away, right? But we didn't know. So at the time, we were using it, and a call had gone out because while we were driving this way and the officer was driving this way and he'd done the UE, unbeknownst to us, a Free Stater drove by this way, saw there were like cop lights, saw there was a car with a porcupine on it, did not even know it was me, and was just like, I'm gonna call it in. So they called it in. So then, like six Free Staters just show up. Now it's like midnight, right? So they show up, and now the police are like, what's going on? Are you all Free Staters? They know who we are. Like, it's kind of like it's getting weird. So 4 cops are down with the vehicle with the gun. I get Brandon Montplaisir, rookie cop, 19, maybe. I mean, he's probably older, but he seemed like he was like a 19-year-old rookie cop. So he comes to my window and he goes, license and registration. Now remember, at this stage, I have moved my vehicle on their instructions from the road into the school. I am far away from them. There's a fence separating me. I have parked my car. I've gotten out of my car. I was filming them. When the other cops show up, they get super like, get in your car, get in your car. And I'm like, is that a direct order, sir? It's like, yes, it's a direct order. Get in your car. Now they're kind of upset. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to get in my car, but I'll roll down my window and I'll keep my camera trained in their direction. Now, by this stage, I actually realize my video camera is not working. But I'm like, I'm not going to let them know what I know. I'm just going to roll with this because they will know. They don't know, and they're going to think they're being recorded, and maybe they'll behave better, right? So when Brandon Montplaisir shows up at my window, I roll it back up, and it's cracked like this. And he goes, license and registration. And I'm like, am I legally required to give you that information? And of course, he's going to say yes. And I'm like, but why? See, because I am parked right now, and he would not legally, if I was parked at Walmart and I was just sitting in my car, a cop cannot walk up to your car and go, hand me your license and registration. Like, there's no probable cause. I've followed all their orders, and I'm sitting in a parking lot. So I don't know. It's late at night. I may be impaired. They don't know. I am like of the opinion I am not about to give them my license and registration. They feel quite strongly in the opposite direction. So we're having a little chit-chat through the window at this stage. So Brandon goes, you have 10 seconds to comply or we are breaking your window. And I was like, wow, that escalated fast. I think it was like 4 minutes, maybe, of to and fro before it's literally like we are going to violently extract you because you will not give us a piece of paper that we want. So at that time, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I should probably just comply, right? Because you're like, they're going to, and at the window, it's going to cost the mechanic, whatever. And I was scared, honestly. Like at that stage, you're kind of like, ooh, this activist thing could be a little harder than I thought. This is a little feistier than I needed. So I did exit the vehicle. They slammed me up against the car, slapped on the cuffs. It was like very like a movie. And then they threw me in the bucket seat in, whatever their little cruiser was. So fine, now I'm sitting in this seat, but I can watch everything, and I can listen to the police radio, so that's kind of awesome too. So now I can tell from what they're calling in from the front squad car, which is bleeping in my car. I'm like, oh, okay, they've got their license and registrations. They're running the plates. They're running the plates in Massachusetts. They're running the plates under a different name. They're running the names under different names. I don't know. It's very interesting. But then this I think it was a fourth car, shows up with a poor, hapless po-po dog. I think we should start a movement that just saves police dogs from the police, right? So this dog shows up, and it's a drug dog. And I've never seen a drug dog other than, say, at like an international airport. And I'm like, I don't know why anyone ever watches the dogs. Because what you should be watching is the people watching the dogs, watching their luggage, and because I know, I'll be like, if there's a dog, I'm walking that way. If your luggage is over there, right? So anyway, so the drug dog shows up, and he takes him around my friend's vehicle, and I swear to God, like he walks around the car, he's got the dog's here, the back wheel's here. Now I'm watching from over here, no one else can see me, and I watch the police officer just tap on the wheel, and then the dog sat down and barked. And I was like, huh. And then I hear them say on the radio, the dog alerted, and I'm like, yeah, the dog alerted. He told the dog to alert. Like the police officer alerted, but the dog didn't do anything. So they use that as probable cause, and they actually arrested and prosecuted them for less than 0.1 grams of marijuana is what they found in the car eventually. All right, so by this stage, I'm in the squad car. Now they're going to take us. They're free staters around. We get to the police station, and they take me in the back. And it's a smallish police station. I've never been arrested at that stage. I've never really been arrested since then. But, it's bright lights. It's a small town. I'm not really, fearing for my life or anything. But I'm like, this is a little scary. Because what happens when you're put in cuffs is actually, we talk about these ideas of liberty, but when you actually lose your physical freedom, it's terrifying, right? Because okay, now I'm in cuffs, they take me in, they're not sure what to do with me. There's a bench and there's a pole, so they're like, we're not gonna put you in a holding cell, but we're gonna chain you to this pole. So I've got the cuff, and I'm sitting there, and by now I'm sort of processing, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a weird Tuesday night, Carla, So I'm trying to think, am I going to process? Am I going to give them my name? What am I legally required to give them? All those questions you ask yourself. So they asked me for my name. And then they asked me for my social security number. It was question number 2. And I was like, I know this one. I was like, no, I know this one. Oh, I have to give you my social security. Then they go, what's your husband's name? And I'm like, what, relevance? So I'm just lawyering here on the pole. But my arm is really sore. And it was tight. And so I was like, hey, Brandon, could you come over here and loosen my cuff a little? And he's like, oh, sure, of course. And he comes over, and they have a special key, and he ratchets that cuff as tight as it can go. And it was that moment where I was like, you motherfucker, it's on, right? Because I was just like, So, unbeknownst to me, on the outside of where all this is happening to me, activists have shown up. They're confronting and talking to the police in the lobby. One of my friends is filming this once again, strangely angers them, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing if you're so scared of people recording and documenting what you're doing? You know you're not being honorable. And so my friend was recording, and they were like, if you don't get out of here now, we're going to arrest you too. And he was like, okay. And he turns around, and he walks out, and he's walking out, and the cops are following him. And he goes, you pussies. They whip out their tasers on the ground, in the parking lot. Now we got one spread eagle on the ground. So I'm inside. Me and Brandon are having a chit-chat. We're like getting to know each other. There's not a lot of love or respect lost, but we are like having a talk, right? So now my other friend comes in here. I didn't even know they were there, right? Because by now there's a turnout, like things are happening. So I'm kind of like, what are you doing here? He's like, I came to call the cops the pussies for you. And I was like, thank you, friend. That's a real friend. So they put him in the holding cell. I'm on the pole with my hands all blue and swollen. So some stage, I don't remember exactly when, they realize we don't give a shit. And they realize they don't really give a shit either. So if I was writing this for my screenplay, you know, like you put the artsy spin on it, it felt very much like, I mean, candidly, it felt like two gangs. Kind of like West Side Story, and instead of clicking our fingers, we were just, you know, being like, you know, I think you're rotten for these reasons. And they were like, we think you're rotten for these reasons. But our reasons are a lot better than theirs, because they don't like us. But we ain't, you know, shooting people in the back, killing dogs, standing outside while children get slaughtered, you know. We aren't really the problem. So we have a pretty intense conversation with these guys. But we're all trying to be like, I do recall, and you're tired and you're stressed, and so I can't remember verbatim, but I do remember at one time I actually said to whoever seemed to be sort of in charge, I was like, so when all this is said and done, would you go out with me for a drink? I will take you out for a drink, and we can have this conversation when I'm not chained to a pole. And he looks at me and he goes, I would never have a drink with you. And I thought, how do you win? If someone's not willing to have a conversation with you, if they are so demented in their power structures, how do you win against that? So that was very interesting to me. But what I didn't notice at the time was that there were cameras in the area. And I made a note, and I thought, oh, well, okay, like I'm gonna subpoena that. That's gonna be great for my documentary one day, right? Fine, so now and I could tell this story forever, so let me just check time here. Okay, we got all right, so now the bail guy shows up, right? And it's 2:30 in the morning, maybe close to 3 by this stage. I have demanded my phone call, as I see they've told us to do in movies. I'm like, I demand you call my lawyer. And they're just all looking at me like, girl, you're chained to a pole. I don't know what kind of princess world you're in, but we're doing what we're doing. So when they decide they're going to let me go, they, we do our fingerprints. There's a little still to and fro. The bailiff, or the bondsman, I guess, he's just some local dude who seems awfully pissed to be called out at like 3 in the morning for whatever's happening, right? And we made eye contact, and it's a $30 bond, and for a PR, so they let you go on your personal reconnaissance. And I remember, like, I made eye contact with him, and I was like, is this normal? And he's like, no, I don't know what's happening. But he was very clear that whatever the vibe was very targeted and directed at us. So we do the things. They're about to let me go. They hand me my handbag, which they have now gone through. I'm annoyed that they've gone through my shit without a warrant. So I very rudely take out my wallet and start counting my cash. And when he looked at me, I was like, I'm just checking whether all the money I came in with is coming out with me. And they were very offended by that, right? So then they're like, okay, leave now. 3 o'clock in the morning, leave now. And I'm like, where's my video camera that you confiscated? They're like, no, we're going to keep that. I'm like, no, I don't think you are. And they're like, no, we are. It's evidence. It's evidence of your crime. You're disobeying an officer. You're like breaking up governmental whatever. I mean, whatever their bullshit charges are, right? And I'm like, well, I see your point. Yes, it could be evidence. So you can keep it, but clearly you have to give me a receipt so that I can prove you took my shit. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, let's just be real clear here. You're going to steal my video camera that you're claiming you need for evidence. You're not going to give me any proof that you took it. And you're charging me with a crime that could be exonerated with this camera. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, then I'm not fucking leaving. And so the cop in charge storms across the land holding area, and he adds a charge to my charge sheet, which at this stage was really just disobeying an officer, like, the fuzzy stuff. And he charges me with wiretapping. And I'm so grateful he did, because after that I was like, now you gave me an opportunity. So I went to, they arraign us. We get to the arraignment. The same bondsman is now like the muscle at the court. This is New Hampshire. It's adorable. Everyone knows everyone. It's all good. And am I over time? No, okay. So we get to the court, and I look over the bondsman, because he and I are buddies now. We've hung out at 3 in the morning. And I see on the arraignment sheet, there's my name, my friend's name, and it says FS with a circle around it next to our names. And I go, hey, what's that FS for? And he looks at me. I go, is it for Free Stater? And he's like, he never talked. He just talked with his eyes and his head, So he's like not betraying, I don't know, their code, but also being like, these guys are kind of being jerks. So we see that. So now we're at the arraignment. By this time, the persecutor has figured out they might have bitten off more than they wanted to chew. So they decide, you know what, we're just going to null pros you guys. We're just going to be like, sorry, we withdraw the charges. It's all good, right? It's all good. Sorry, we overstepped, but, no one. I was like, So the first thing I did is I instructed my lawyer to file a motion to reinstate the charges. The judge who had to hear that motion was like, no. I don't know what we've done here, but no, okay? So I feel very strongly that I deserve my day in court, that I have been wronged, that I have been chained to a pole, that I've been called names, that I've been hurt, and that all of it was unnecessary because some dude with a shiny badge was like, you're going 4 miles over the hour at 11:30 at night, slowing down when there's literally no one around, right? Like, there's no reason for any of this. So I was like, screw you. I'm going to file a federal court case. You violated 34 of my civil rights, and let's go. So as these things go, the wheels of injustice turn quite slowly. So it's motions back and forth. We get to the deposition. And this is probably my favorite part. So here's a little test. Do you know how you know things? You know things because you experience them. So when something happened to you, you generally know it happened, right? When you make shit up a lot, you don't really remember what lie you told to whom. So when I got the original police report in the mail from my lawyer, I read it, I laughed out loud several times, and then I called him and I said, "Good one." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Have you read the police report?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's not 100%. And I'm like, no. The police report starts with, I was parked in the middle of 114, and I jumped out of my car when my friend's car, the police car, my car, remember, he got out, he came, he talked to me. This police report starts with, they were at a traffic stop. I showed up from nowhere, some crazy lady. I parked in the middle of the street, jumped out of my car with my video camera, with one fist raised, running down the street at 11:30 at night, yelling, "Remember the calls!" Now, while I love that, and I will call my movie that, that did not happen. So, that was lie number 1 in the police report, and it goes downhill from there. So they claim that they feared for their life because there were firearms in the other vehicle, and I was outside training a red laser-like, scope-like light on the officer. So, the camera I was using is the #1 camera used by bootleggers worldwide to film in movie theaters because it does not have lights on it. So in order for my red laser-like light from my camera, which, by the way, they were in possession of. Like, they were lying on the police report, but I was like, man, if you're gonna lie, at least lie in the lane, right? Like, stuff that you could corroborate. You can't just make shit up wholesale. But they can, and they do. And I have to tell you, when I read all of it in the police report, it again gave me that really almost heartbroken feeling, because you know it's bad, but you don't want it to be that bad, right? Like, I do believe all police are individuals. We are individualists. So I genuinely do not like it when we collectivize police, because I think we're doing the same thing that we tell people not to do to us. That being said, there was no fathomable reason to tell those lies in that police report. Like, that is someone who's consciously sitting there and making the moral choice to just make up bullshit to make someone else look bad. So when we got to the deposition, I was like, Brandon Montplaisir, you're gonna sit down and have a convo with me. Now, I should say, at my deposition, they played a lot of funny games, including they had their person who does the transcripts show up 2 hours late, which was not an accident, because we ended up sitting in that room. My lawyers, it was at my lawyer's office. They were like, hey, do you mind if we go do other work? I'm like, no, time is money. Go knock yourself out. I'm a grown-up. I can handle it. But while I was sitting there, I knew what he was doing, the lawyer on the other side. He'd be like, oh, your hair looks real different. The photo I saw online, it was blue. You know, like he would just drop these like little things, like weird, borderline stalker-y kind of notes, right? So I didn't like him either. So when it was, their first or second question in my deposition was, so what is it with free staters and raw milk? Like, I don't know. I mean, we like freedom. I guess we like, some people, I get excited about raw milk. What can I say? But I kind of knew where it was going to go from there. So when it was our turn, I was very determined to, based on their questioning of me, and at the time I was serving as the president, and all the questions were designed to formulate an argument that they could say we are a gang, and that based on that, there's all kinds of really bad, even federal level stuff. RICO can come in and whatever. But you don't really want to be designated as a gang because they use that to violate your rights more so than usual, right? So I was like, okay, I see what you guys did there, trying to make me seem like a raw milk, freedom-loving gang of, nerds, okay? I was like, I'm going to prove you guys are a gang, and you're the thin blue gang, and I'm going to have some fun with this. So Brandon sits down. He realizes 3 questions in that he should have done his homework and reread the police report that he lied about. Because now he's sitting there and he's like, oh, I'm going to corroborate your version. So he's like, oh, what did I say? He's literally reaching out and pulling it closer and trying to read it upside down. So that happens, that goes on. I tell my lawyers I want the thin blue line questioning. They are advising me, we don't think we should do that. I go, I don't care. I'm your client. You actually either have to fire me now or do what I say. That's kind of how it works, right? And they're like, okay. So we go back in, and my lawyer goes, so we have some questions about the thin blue line. The lawyer jumps up like a crazy guy, slams the table, and goes, relevance. I'm a member of the thin line club, like a gang or whatever. So he's trying to make an argument, polka dot, whatever. He's like, lawyers have a thing. These guys are just also a group. So Brandon at first plays dumb. He says he doesn't understand what insignia means. He asks, oh, do you mean the blue lines that run down the side of our pants? I mean, it's laughable, the things he's coming up with. And I just keep kicking my lawyer under the table, keep asking the questions. Until he admits, as we knew, that the Weir PD, including stories of people sending me messages saying the college students buy their Coke there, he says, well, yes, most of us have bracelets. Most of us have the bumper stickers on our cars. We have all the signs on our desks. So he does admit, pretty much by their standards, that they are indeed a gang. All right, so we do the depositions, and then fast forward, because I did say it would be the story of my arrest, not so much my case, because they're saying I'm almost out of time. So 4 years later, we go to the first district court in Boston. The first district court is the court right under the Supreme Court. There are 9 of them. It's a big deal. It's basically that or the Supreme Court. And I did look them in the eyes, and I was like, appeal it. They wouldn't, right? But they had appealed all the way to there because they're not paying the bills. And we said, you violated my constitutional rights. We absolutely have the right to document our public officials in public in the execution, pardon the pun, of their public duties, and that they do not have the right to stop us from doing that. They actually made the argument that because it was at late night and in the dark, somehow the Constitution should not apply. I remember looking their lawyer in the eye, and I was like, are you literally telling me, you think the Constitution does not work after dark? And he was like, and I was like, wow, okay, dude. So we waited and we waited. People were betting, is it going to go our way? Is it going to be a good decision? What's going to happen? Because, it actually has given us a lot of power. The reason we're having conversations about police accountability, about defunding the police, and all of that is because for the first time in human history, we can prove they've been lying, and we can prove that they're wrong. And they hate that. And so in my case, they said, of course you have the right to do it. Everyone should do it. Not only do we have the right to do it, but they do not have qualified immunity if an officer, and they do it way more frequently than they still should, if they take your camera, if they force you to delete your footage, if they do anything like that, you have a great case. The going rate is $275,000 in New Hampshire for those cases. So if it happens to you, you look those cops dead in the eye and you go, my friend Carla says you're in trouble.